Welcome to the Where Humanity Meets Technology podcast, where we talk to business leaders about cybersecurity, data management, and advanced digital solutions to provide strategies to increase the profitability of your company. Now, here's your host, Maurice Hamilton, the CEO of Infinovate Consultancy Services.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast, Where Humanity Meets Technology. I'm your host, Maurice Hamilton. We want to welcome everybody to the audience. Today, we'd like to talk a little bit about our what we do with our podcast. We actually have a podcast here where we like to interview and have conversations with chief information officers, chief technology officers, chief security officers, and talk about their operations and how they're actually applying some ways with humanity that makes it better for everybody, better for the organization, better for society, and how they're using automation within their infrastructure. Today, I'm really honored and very happy to have with me Tom Ferrucci. Tom is actually the Chief Information Officer with Natco Group. And I want to make sure I say that right, get that right.
You did.
So Tom, thank you. And I want to welcome you to the podcast here. And we're very happy to have you.
Well, Maurice, thank you very much for having me on. It's a great pleasure.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Tom, I'd like to start the conversation off with some basic information. And I was just telling you a short time ago, that I've actually been in this industry for many years and go back to the days of floppy disk and the 3.5 inch and a 5 1/4 floppy drives and DRAM cards, and actually little chips would go into motherboards back in the day, and we had big mainframes. So, Tom, how did you actually get started in the technology industry? Maybe you can actually open the door a little bit for us and share some information how you got started with technology.
Sure. So we talked a little bit before this, and we've been doing this about the same amount of time. I've been involved in the IT for the last 35 years. It really started off with an interest back in high school where, we were doing some very rudimentary programming and trying to learn the basics about how computers worked, and thought, could that potentially be of interest to me? And it definitely was. So, with that interest in mind, I did end up going to school at Bryant University in Rhode Island to study that. And my entire career path has been in IT. I think, started off within programming, software development, which is something I love to do. And I think it's just kind of evolved into that as I've grown into different roles, different companies. But it goes back to the ability to create something and then have whatever I created be used in a way to help grow the business, grow people, improve processes and things like that. And it's really a fun thing to see when you can create something like that, and then you can actually see the end result of some sort of improvement in place. So it's been a long career, and I've seen all the the technology evolutions that you've talked about, and from where we started to where we are today, to even thinking about what it's going to be like in the next 10 years or so, that I'll continue to work in these areas. It's exciting to continue to be part of this.
It is. And you mentioned something I think that is a common denominator that we both have. We both were coders. We actually did our software development many, many years ago. And I think that it goes out to what you just mentioned about the continuous process, continuous improvement, where
Yes.
we want to see the result of our hard work and our labor and all those hours and hours and hours spending on coding. So we like to see the results.
No, I agree. I think that's kind of one of the most rewarding parts of the job, is when you can work with someone who's struggling to get something accomplished, and then the light goes on in their eyes that they were able to save, time, effort, get the information much faster. And it's always a rewarding part of it. With there's frustrating parts of it too, when things don't work out as precisely as you want. But I think a lot of it, you can really have an impact on a lot of people and how they work, how the satisfaction of their job is.
Excellent. And Tom, I didn't mention this before, but one of my role models, and I don't know if you know who Mike Rowe is, what's called Dirty Jobs on
Yes.
TV.
Yes.
And I like his role because I actually look at that and say, wow, I would like to do that too. Let me interview different people from different industries. And I want to talk a little bit about Natco Group, because this is a little bit different we've interviewed people in engineering, people in, of course, in technology and scientists and all the kind of different people for it. Can you tell our audience a little bit about Natco Group and exactly what the company does? I know from seeing walking in Lowe's or Home Depot what you do, but can you share that with the audience here?
Yes. So Natco Home Group is a manufacturer and distributor of flooring, primarily rugs. We also do home decor items, home textiles, things like that, where we have two large manufacturing facilities, one in Sanford, Maine, which makes some very high-end, just beautiful carpets that we are selling to a lot of the big box stores that you've mentioned, many of the other ones that everyone is familiar with. We also have a very large site down in Dalton, Georgia, which is the carpet capital of the world. We have 5 different buildings down there that are manufacturing, again, carpets, rugs as well. But we do quite a bit of importing as well. And we import some rugs. We also import some home textiles as well, which are all terrific products for us. We are headquartered here in Rhode Island, where I am. This is our corporate offices. We've been around for 105 years, right? So it's a well-established company, but it's very forward-looking, continues to grow. I think they've really put some good people, some good processes in place. And it's I think, got a very, exciting future for a company that's 105 years old. You think, sometimes you would think that it doesn't, react as quickly, but it definitely is embracing technology. It's definitely embracing looking to the future and, the different things that we can do, not just in the IT area, but in many other areas as well. So that's always a good thing.
I think that's an excellent segue. Congratulations on the company being 105 years old. That is commendable right there. But let's talk a little bit about because I know your role is the Chief Information Officer, and let's talk about how your role actually comes into play when it comes to not only taking care of the current infrastructure and the hardware and the software and the upgrades that go along with that. Maybe we can start and talk a little bit about the future. How do you actually see that your company, Natco Group, can actually automate more in the future? And what have you guys done right now in order to actually get to those particular levels?
I think there's a lot of opportunities for us in the future. I think, we're starting to make some progress in areas, with analytics and certain tools. And I think we're more than just scratching the surface. We've been able to dive into that pretty deeply. I think we have a lot of great data that we kind of unlocked with some of the analytics, but we think we can go much further. I think that we can, start leveraging things like AI and machine learning to unlock things that we're not getting insights to. A lot of people are doing precisely that, but, our people in our space, we're in that mid-sized space where you're maybe not the biggest in the world, but we're not a little guy either. And, our competitors that we're directly, looking at in our space, we want to be ahead of them. We want to be able to leverage technology for a competitive advantage and try to be ahead of the curve on some of that. When you look at tools like machine learning or AI, and can we leverage that kind of stuff? I also think, tools like, robotics a bit, when we're maybe automating some very rudimentary processes when it comes to counting materials and things that we really can look to automate, I think would be something that's we're going to try to embrace as well. I think we have lots of opportunities, and for us, it's really trying to prioritize and pick the right opportunities that are really going to help us the most. So that's we're seeing a lot of things like that, but a year from now, it could be something a little different that strikes our interest and we think that can be really valuable to us. I think the opportunities here, and like any place, are pretty broad, and making sure we pick the right one is always important as well.
Oh, that's awesome. I like how you mentioned two really key areas there. You mentioned one with data. I know one of the things that we actually work with our organization, we work with companies to say, I think this is I always have to be careful how I say this. A lot of people say your employees are the key to your organization. I go back and say, what, I would give a good run for your data being really key for your organization as well, because your data contains a lot of information about the customer buying behaviors. You can actually put trends analysis there. You can actually look at competitive information. There's a lot of information that you can learn from the data. So I think it's very interesting, very compelling that you guys are actually taking the data and using analytics and actually taking that. So how can we actually get better and continue and improve our process there? So that's one area I thought that's really, I don't know if you want to comment a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I think, the people that we work with, obviously we work with like the manufacturing direct employees that manufacture the products and the warehousing people, but, there's quite a few people, they're dealing with data, right? They're working in, management positions, executive positions, and they're dealing with numbers and facts and their ability to react quickly and make smart decisions. We're trying to improve that process, because that does translate all the way down to the factory floor, and, how efficient we can make things, how safe we can make things and how we can, make a better working environment. And a lot of people physically aren't touching the carpets or the home, decor items on a day-to-day basis, but they're dealing with data every single day. That's their jobs in a lot of cases. So the ability for us to make that process more transparent and more flexible and something that can really leverage as one of our, maybe the biggest asset or one of the biggest assets is important.
Wow. And when you said that, I kind of like imagined the warehouse space there. I imagine that the guys are putting information inside the racks and getting everything ready for delivery. Because you
Yes.
think about it, you have to have a really big process flow when it comes to supply chain. And like you mentioned, you're importing and exporting. So you have your materials coming in and then you're manufacturing everything. You have to store everything for it. There's a lot of automation that goes in that process.
Definitely is, right? You need to be very efficient with those processes. And, we think we are. We think we can improve, but I think that's critical to what we're trying to do, 100%.
Okay, good. So we're painting a picture for our audience here, how what that supply chain kind of looks like, and we're talking about the storage, the operations facility with the manufacturing plant, and with the warehousing. And you're right, a lot of the guys really don't touch everything for it, but they have some kind of part and fundamental part getting everything out to the door. And one of the things I have to go back and look at that, even with operational efficiency with your software that you're using. Tom, do you guys actually use like in-house developers to kind of go back and tweak everything for your software and say, how can we actually add this particular module here? Or do you outsource that kind of work? How does that work with the organization when you come back and say, how can we make everything better or process improvement?
We do. Yeah, we do. We have a good solid core group of developers that have been working on the platform that we run here for quite some time. They have the ability to extend, customize the different systems that we're working on so that we can, tailor it more to our business processes and our users' needs. A lot of times we like to keep some generic areas of the system as vanilla as possible. When you come to certain areas in the financial areas, whether it's, some of the accounting areas for paying bills or receiving, cash in, that doesn't change a lot from company to company. But when you really start to delve deeper into the operations area is the differentiator, right? A lot of times, and in previous positions and in here, we are spending time merging information technology with OT, operational technology. And I think that's really where you get a lot of value, right? You put those two pieces together, you can really start to do some pretty interesting things. When you're looking at the warehouse or the shop floor, especially in manufacturing areas, the amount of equipment now that's enabled, IP enabled, that you can connect to your network and start gathering data off of, and then take that, I consider it to be like a tidal wave of data that you can get from these, and how can we use that to our advantage is, I think, really important.
Interesting. I read in the Wall Street Journal this morning, they were talking about, and you and I actually probably really big and would think about the future of blockchain. And the article was actually a little different. This article talked about where we know, you and I know the advantages. A lot of our audience members know how blockchain can actually come out there, and you can use it with the supply chain, and you can do chain of custody and all these different things for it. But it was the article kind of pointed out that saying that a lot of the progression that they expected with blockchain is slower than normal. And then I thought about that and said they're probably right, because there are so many different moving parts, because you have to involve the suppliers, you have to involve your operations. There are a lot of people that's involved with blockchain. So when you mentioned about supply chain, it made me think about that and said, I guess that could be something that can it'll be beneficial when it comes into play, but it can be kind of hard to instill that.
You're 100% right. That's actually an area we focused on quite a bit here at Natco, is trying to improve efficiencies with the supply chain. I think in a post-COVID world, supply chain has been a big issue for everyone, and we are aggregating data from many sources into a single repository where we're trying to make this clearer to everyone, what the supply chain, what the constraints are, and I think we've had some success, but I think the volatility in the supply chain makes it a challenge, right? We just want to be better than others in terms of trying to manage this, but you're right, there's so many different pieces to it, and putting all the pieces together has been an interesting process for it. We're getting there, and I think we're actually doing pretty good with it, but I definitely see more of it that we can put into it, because when you look at things like shipping lanes and port congestion and the different variables that can go into the supply chain, it really is a lot that to come together to get your answer at the end of the day. When are my goods going to get to where I need them to be?
Right. Absolutely. So let me ask you a couple of questions. I'm throwing a whole bunch of information out there. And when I think about it, and your role as the CIO, And I always ask this question, I like to ask the guys to say, what keeps you up at night? What actually makes you toss and turn sometimes in the night? And most people have the same general answer, but I don't assume anything. So Tom, what would you say? What's something that keeps you up at night?
So probably the same thing that keeps a lot of people up at night is security, right? Making sure that our systems and our users are continuing to be safe, right? So we're not going to give you the secret sauce here, but we use a lot of
Right.
tools similar tools to what a lot of other people are using, train our users, and our users have done a nice job with the training, and we test our users, and they've done I think a good job there. But we really need to continue to reinforce it. As good as you're doing, you got to get better at it, right? So that's the one thing, the biggest thing that probably keeps us up at night. I think that's probably not unlike many other people in my position is the biggest concern, right? Everything we do, right? One of the pillars of everything we do is security, right? It's got to, first you need to have, systems that are functional and systems that are sustainable and that we can derive value out of. But the fourth pillar is security, right? You can have the lowest cost system that has the most functionality that will last forever. But if it's not secure, I can't do anything with it because the whole thing will fall apart.
It's amazing. Of all the CIOs, CSOs, and CTOs, I've asked that question to. It's been unanimous, 100%. Everybody say cybersecurity is the one thing, the one aspect that they always have to work on every single day because it doesn't go away. So the two-factor, they think about talk about the emails, the testing, the auditing, and there's so much involved with it. So you're in the same hands with everybody else. So that's, and
I guess
again,
not surprisingly, but yes.
yeah, it is. But I think that one day we'll actually be able to have some systems in place and have some protocols in place that we can actually stop the guys from actually going back and doing some of the bad things that they do to curtail it. I think that the more and more we come up with encryption, the more and more, not only the hardware, but the biases and the systems there that can stop the guys, but and then I think we get everybody in the mindset you always have to be aware of your environment. You always have to be aware of everything that you open up. And I think that that'll make a big difference, especially to help companies, because you're right, that is just foremost the forefront of everybody I speak with, is that security.
I agree, yes.
So we had a chance to talk about data lakes. We had a chance to talk a little bit about cybersecurity, and we talked about in-house developers. What are your thoughts, Tom, when it comes to cloud migrations? We saw a really big influx. First of all, let me back it up a little bit. Well, first, nobody wanted to go to the cloud. Everybody said, I'm not going to do anything with the cloud. And now I think a lot of companies are still looking at taking more of a hybrid type approach. And I think there's been a lot of technology going out there where you can actually put your data in AWS or Google now, and your data is actually hidden from a lot of the bad actors are out there. And so I'm starting to see a little bit more people actually going out there doing like a hybrid approach. What are your thoughts on cloud migration, especially as we move more towards the future and encryption?
Yeah, I think we followed the same evolution, right? I think if you take a look back, going back years, it was probably something that we were a little bit more skeptical of, and we really thought that there was a lot of concerns. So sure are a lot of concerns, but I think as it has evolved, right, we have developed a strategy where we are hybrid, right? We do a lot of things in the cloud now, and I think for a couple of reasons. I think when you look at things like scalability and redundancy, it's great. I think the myth of it being a low cost option is not always there. I think in the long term, you probably end up paying equivalent or probably even a little bit more. But you get to do things like you can scale up quickly. You can get redundancy with multiple data centers and failovers where it's harder to do that with on-premise solutions. But of course, we still do have some on-premise solutions that we manage, and I think we do a good job managing them, and we have the failovers, and we have a lot of the redundancies that are required for those types of things. But if we're looking at a new initiative and a new project, typically we look cloud first. Let's see what we can deploy, because people now are used to adoption of the cloud, and they can see that you can deploy a little more rapidly in some cases. Then they're looking for that kind of solution, and we do look there first a lot of times. So that's really where it starts off with me in a lot of cases.
A lot of people say the same thing, and I think that's again one of those unanimous type migrations that I'm starting to see with CEOs and CTOs out there and CIOs. Here's more of a question, more of a survey type question. I'm noticing that. Well, let me ask you a question first. Are you noticing that you're replacing your hardware as often as you were before in the past, or pretty much now you're running for 3 years or 5 years or a certain period of time with the hardware out there? Do you replace it as like once a year? Are you starting to see that happen?
Yeah, so I think that the cycles to do the replace the hardware hasn't changed very much.
Mhm.
Sometimes, you're looking at the financial impact. We'll say, all right, hey, this year, I know when I had spent many years in the automotive, there were some cyclical economic downturns in automotive, so we may have ratcheted it back a little bit, and then we kind of catch up a little bit. But I think for us, you're looking at a desktop environment every 3 to 4 years on the server, SAN, infrastructure equipment. It's a little bit longer cycle. It hasn't changed a lot for us. I think we need to stay on top of it, right? We continuously review it. And I think we have some tools now to manage the assets that are a little better than they had been in the past. So we try to leverage those tools to make better decisions for us.
Okay, and I'm finding that that seems to be the trend as well. Now you can actually update some of the systems with the BIOS to keep them updated
Mhm.
through the software, through patches and everything for it. But I think that people want to keep their system automated to process information as fast as possible because that does in the long run improve productivity and
It
performance
does.
for the employees.
Yeah, you
Okay,
can't let it go too long for sure.
right, exactly, exactly. And then the last question I have for you, what do you think about when it comes to like automation in the future? How do you see automation, especially in regards to your industry of actually being state of the art? What are some of your plans and your dreams to in that particular area?
Yeah, I think for us, I think it's kind of a continuation, a couple of things we talked about. I think, really trying to leverage more of the tools. I think, we really want to make a deeper push into things like IoT, being able to connect to more equipment on the plant floor and the operations area. I do think that's a big differentiator when you merge IT and OT, like I said, the operational technology. I think robotics can and definitely help out in certain areas, right? Where, because we're doing a lot of importing, we're managing a lot of inventory. You really would love to get better management of the inventory if we do a good job now, but it can be a labor intensive process at times. And I think there's things that we have foundationally already in place that we can leverage to make these tasks more manageable, much more efficient, much more accurate. So I would say that kind of thing. I think we talked a little bit about potential safety issues as well. So I think using some tools, whether it's low code, no code, to come up with safety audits, things like that. I know back when COVID started, we were using facial recognition and some other tools to determine people that were entering the facility, and it actually not only did facial recognition, it actually did a heat scan too, so that it would take people's temperatures, so that it would we know who the person was, and if they potentially had they were not feeling well, and we try to keep the rest of the employees safe. So using tools like that were things that when I look at the beginning of my career, we never would have thought about that stuff. And it's the kind of thing that you look forward to another 10 years from now. We just try to, like I said, I think we try to stay ahead of companies within our space. It's probably tough for us to compete with $100 billion companies, but we really want to be ahead and use IT to a competitive advantage for the people that we're directly competing with. We want to be able to leverage the data and the information in the best way that we possibly can. And again, hopefully make the right choices, because there's so many different things we can do with it.
Well, I 100% agree with. I think you're moving in the right direction, especially when you think about biometrics, IoT, and sensors, and facial recognition, and heat scan temperatures for employees. Because it's a safety thing too.
It
Everybody
is.
can
It
say
is.
not only safety for the health of people, but safety for security for everybody as well.
Yeah,
There's
no,
a lot of moving parts there.
I agree 100%. Yes.
Wow. Well, Tom, this has been a an awesome podcast here, and I really enjoy the conversation here, and I think we have the loving for automation and love for the future here. So I want to thank you for your time here. This is really really great.
No, Maurice, thank you very much for inviting me to be on. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you about some of these different areas that we've discussed. And just again, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to like it and drop a couple of comments and send me an email. I like to have different ideas on different other guests that we can bring on in the future, and we can actually enlighten everyone with something that's going to actually intrigue you and interest you. We've had some interesting guests like Tom here that brought some additional insights, and I think that we can all benefit from it. So thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from your host, connect with Maurice on LinkedIn at Maurice Hamilton. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.